Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. It's G here, and welcome to my channel. Today, I'm going to be talking about a book that is very well loved in the booktok community, especially in the academia space. If We're Villains, written by M.L. Rio, is described as an adult contemporary mystery and literary thriller. The synopsis reads, Oliver Marks has just served 10 years in jail for a murder he may or may not have committed. On the day he is released, he is greeted by the man who put him in prison. Detective Colborne is retiring, but before he does, he wants to know what really happened a decade ago. As one of the 7 young actors studying Shakespeare at an elite arts college, Oliver and his friends play the same roles on stage and off: hero, villain, tyrant, temptress, ingenue, extra. But when the casting changes and the secondary characters usurp the stars, the plays spill dangerously over into life, and one of them is found dead. The rest face their greatest acting challenge yet, convincing the police and themselves that they are blameless. I got this book a while back, for Christmas actually, but I was looking for a gritty academia book that would have me hooked. But no matter what all the good reviews said, from friends and YouTubers alike, I just couldn't get into it. At first I thought, maybe this book just isn't for me, but the thing is, it is. It's filled with tropes I really enjoy, such as the whodunit, academic setting, and, as a former drama student and lover, Shakespeare. Not only that, but even the layout of the book, based on what I've seen, seems to be very much my style. A slight variation to the cliche, I bet you're wondering how I ended up in this situation, with Oliver from the future detailing to Detective Colborne, and by extension the readers, the happenings of the murder mystery that occurred 10 years prior. Despite me struggling to get into this book, as the summer holidays are now finally here, I've decided to give it another shot. Not only to finally take this book off my never-ending TBR list, but also to truly see if this book really just isn't for me. In this video, I'm going to talk about my expectations going into this book, as well as how I think I will react to this book. And finally, after I finish, I'll post a follow-up video as well as my final decision. Expectations. All in all, I would say my expectations going into this book are pretty much the same as they always are. There are 5 main metrics that I measure a book by. I like to call it WISP. It's probably similar to metrics that you or other booktubers might have. I just call it something different or have slightly different ones. Those 5 factors are world building, interactions, characters, plot, and prose. World building. Even though this is a standard that I typically hold for fantasy or sci-fi, it's still something that I expect contemporary works to hold to too. This is for 2 main reasons. Firstly, for immersion. If I'm reading a book and the surroundings and environment is barely described, how am I supposed to feel like I'm there? If a character randomly describes a place that they frequent, for example, I want to be able to feel like I'm also there and present, or what's the point? Secondly, by describing the world through the characters, I'm getting to find out more about the characters as well. Do they like to watch the sunrise and set in the morning? Can they even do that, or is the city too polluted? Do they live in a town, a village, or a big city? And yes, those 3 things are actually distinctly different. Small tidbits that the characters say about their surroundings not only show how they grew up, but they also show a lot about their personality. Obviously, if it's fantasy or sci-fi, I'll hold this to a much higher standard because world building is a very integral part of the plot and lore, but even contemporary novels like If We're Villains should at least do the bare minimum. Interactions. This kind of ties into the whole world building aspect with seeing how characters interact with the world around them. It also ties a lot into the characters as well. People aren't islands. Even if they're antisocial in nature or typically avoid others, seeing the way they interact with the characters is still a crucial and sadly ignored aspect in most books I find today. To me, it's not a waste if a portion of the chapter, or even entire chapters themselves, are spent dedicating character interactions, because that's an important part of the story, especially if the story involves a large cast. Not only does it flesh out the characters more and make their impacts in the story more meaningful by getting the readers to actually be interested in who they are, it can also be helpful in sometimes slowing down the action, or giving the reader and the characters a break after a distressing scene. A good example of this is in the book Stags by M.A. Bennett. Spoiler alert. After one of the main characters, Chanel, gets hunted and almost killed by a pack of dogs, there's a dinner scene in which we see the characters almost completely sweep the matter under the rug, too preoccupied with Shaffine's tiger story. Not only is the scene winding down from the previous action, it also establishes the roles of the characters quite well at this point of the story. Shaffine as Henry's foil, the savage that is medieval, Greer as being more of a passive bystander, at least for now, and the other medievals as followers rather than being the leaders that Greer previously saw them as. All in all, this is a subject I can talk about in great length, so if you guys are interested, I can make a video all about it. Characters. Characters are entities that I feel are sometimes capable of making or breaking the story. While characters don't always have to be morally upstanding citizens, they do have to at least have compelling reasons outside of tragic backstory TM to make me root for them or even just feel empathy for them. Throughout the story, they either have to progress or regress, and if they don't do either and remain for the most part stagnant, then there has to be other aspects of them that still makes them interesting. Because at the end of the day, I am reading to feel a sense of entertainment or escapism. If I wanted to see people just go about their lives, I'd go outside. For me, characters aren't just characters or people in a book doing or saying certain things that the authors want. They also have to express values, ideas, and feelings, even ones I don't necessarily agree with. To me, a good character should feel real to me. I should feel invested in what's going on with them, not just whilst reading the book, but also after. Even if the plot and world building is a bit dodgy, I can, to a certain extent, suspend my disbelief and purely enjoy a book for its characters. However, if the opposite was the case with good plot and world building, but god-awful characters, I'm not sure I could genuinely say the same. After all, how could I read through the book and root for or at least be interested in the main characters when they're either irredeemable or just plain boring, and usually self-inserts? I feel like with movies, this flaw is much easier to ignore with the cinematography, discography, and just overall appearance of the movie. But in a book, when you're often inside the characters' heads and following their journey much closer than in a movie, it's just not the case. Plot. The plot, in my opinion, helps to give a book a purpose, a sense of direction, and avoids the book becoming stagnant or boring. In a contemporary setting, for example, that can be as simple as going to your job and maybe you've been demoted or promoted, so you have to go somewhere else and, work, unless you want to end up having no money. Plots can often help to explain character motivations and how or why characters end up in certain conflicts or situations. Oftentimes I find that plots are sometimes little helpers in the background. They push the narrative and characters forward. It makes the stories that bit more compelling and appealing, as opposed to a story where it's just some characters talking in a room. Basically, when it comes to my standards for a plot, all it really has to do is make sense and be interesting, as that's also something I believe can be responsible for making or breaking the book. Finally, prose. This final thing, which unsurprisingly is the shortest section, is really just personal preference, to be completely honest. Sometimes I like a book and not the prose, and vice versa. In my opinion, I think the prose should be a good blend of flowery and matter of fact. What I mean by that is it should have lots of descriptive language in order to make a person feel immersed, but it should be to the point, as it can get to a point where you're over-describing things and spending too long on things, places, or people. All in all, compelling prose isn't really a must for me, it's more of a plus. I won't drop a book because I don't like the prose. If I'm on the verge of DNFing something and the prose also sucks, then that definitely motivates me to just drop the book altogether. In conclusion, when I'm reading If We Were Villains, I'm going to score the book on all these metrics on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being completely missed the mark and 5 being achieved everything I was expecting and more. Then, I'll make a follow-up video, and in the end, rate it overall out of 5 stars. Anyway, that's everything. Hope you enjoyed this video. Right now, I'm getting an Instagram where you can follow me for more content if you're interested, and the link will be in the description. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one. Chi out.